Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be kind of like a chronic illness story, a little bit different. I'm going to kind of walk through falling sick at 16. So I'm going to walk through from the very beginning of my childhood all the way until now. But mainly focusing on when I got sick at 16. So there may be a few interruptions, including Poe, because it's me and I can't film without my cats. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to start with my childhood, mainly because it makes more sense to do falling sick at 16 if I walk all the way through my health journey. I was a relatively healthy child. Your standard illnesses, strep throat, ear infections, all that stuff. Nothing too horrible, nothing that couldn't be figured out. Just normal kid stuff. And then when I was about 9 years old, I started having random abdominal pain. It was always in the same spot. It would come and go for months at a time, and then I would be fine for months at a time. And honestly, I kind of forgot about this until I was talking to my doctor at my yearly physical this year. And he said, "Did they ever figure out what was wrong with you when you were having your random abdominal pain all those years ago?" And I said, "No, they didn't." And I was honestly kind of like, I even told him I kind of forgot about all that. And then the only reason it came up was because I've been having random abdominal pain again, and it felt like when I was a kid. And I said, this pain feels familiar, but I don't remember the last time I had it. And he was going through my medical records, and he found when I was a kid. Same area, same way I was describing it now. So yeah, but that was it. Then when I was about 13 or 14, I started having random chest pain, random shaking. Like I still have the tremors to this day. I don't know if you can really see that or not, but that started about 13 or 14. And my doctor thinks that's when I started actually having POTS symptoms, because he said, "I think you've had POTS your entire life, but what really kicked it off into full gear was when you were 15 and got your Gardasil vaccine." I got my first Gardasil vaccine of July of 2008, the second one in September of 2008, and the final one in January of 2009. And about June of 2009, right before I turned 16, that's when I started having chest pain and dizziness and fainting. That was my first sign that something was wrong. Like I fainted with every Gardasil vaccine, and the doctor said, "Oh, it can happen. It's fine. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with her." And then in June of 2009, I started fainting again. And the doctor went, "Okay, yeah, she's fine. There's nothing wrong with her." Because when I went in for my physical that year, my mom's like, "She's passing out." And the doctor's like, "Sometimes you just pass out. As a girl, you can just pass out." And it didn't help that this doctor was so trusted in my family that pretty much anything I said was being completely ignored, and whatever the doctor was saying was taken as, "Okay, you are the know-all, you know everything. Everything I was saying never happened, and I was an idiot, and I was a liar." So after that it kind of, at first it would start dissipating after a few. I'd have random spells for a few weeks, maybe a month at a time. It would go away, and then it would happen again. And that's what happened in June. I fainted for a few times. I had a random smell for about a month, and then it went away. And in November, I started having weakness and dizziness and shaking. Lasted for a few days, went away, and then it happened in December. It lasted for a few weeks, it went away. And it kept doing that it kept following that pattern until like March of 2010, when I was sick for a whole month. Then it went away, and it didn't show up again until August. And that was, we were getting ready for school to start back. It was my senior year of high school. We were starting back, and we were starting back early because seniors had the option to be a peer tutor, and it took away one of your classes if you were a peer tutor. So it basically gave you a free period. But in order to do that, you had to do a 2-day summer training at school. Rowdy said hi. That's not really what he wants. What he wants is OUT. But but we started like school like a week early. Basically, and honestly, I was not one of those people who prepared myself to start school and get up early again. I just kind of randomly did it. So I thought at first, when I was getting sick again, because it was around the time we did peer tutor training, that that's what was going on. I just started waking up early again, and my body was trying to adjust, and it's like, whoa, no. But I realized it was a few days later that it was different. It was back to when I was getting sick. So it followed that pattern for the next, let's see, till I was about 21. In between all this, I was seeing doctors and being in and out of the ER because I was fainting and having what I know now is convulsive syncope, where it looks like a seizure, but it's not a seizure, I'm just fainting. And my entire body shakes violently at the end of it, so yeah. But no doctor was ever able to tell me anything. So I just kind of, there for a while, for about a year or two, I gave up on doctors. Then one of my friends, I was talking to one of my friends who had the same issues, basically, after she had her vaccine done. And she said, I have autoimmune hemoleukodemia. And I'm thinking, wonder if I have that. And randomly, after we had that conversation, about a week later, I ended up in the ER, and I had that note in my purse. Next appointment, ask doctor about, and I ended up in the ER, and they went through my purse to find my ID or something. And they found that note, and the doctor said, well, we'll check her for anemia anyway, because this is in here. And then somehow they tested me for autoimmune hemoleukodemia, and that came back positive. So I got a call a few days later after the test came back, and I'd been out of the hospital, and they said, okay, this is what you have. This is what you need to do. You need to find this doctor. You need to go figure out your treatment. So that's what I did. None of it really ever helped a whole lot, but I was getting back into having longer periods of time when I wasn't feeling sick. And then in the beginning of 2016, something just flipped a switch and I just wasn't feeling great again. So I went to see a doctor that supposedly had studied autoimmune hemoleukodemia and was going to be able to help me a great deal. I got there, he never checked me for anemia, he never tested me for anemia at all, but he just kept going on about it. So he's like, okay, this is what you're going to do. And so we did that. It didn't help me. He sent me to a few random he sent me to an ENT in September of that year. I had a whole bunch of tests done and nothing. I just kind of gave up on doctors once again. And in between 2019 and 2020, before I started working at the daycare and getting sick all the time, I was basically fine. I was basically healthy. I was taking care of myself. I was holding up on what I had to do to take care of myself with whatever illness I had. And I was doing good. And then in 2021, I started feeling sick again. It was more or less the end of 2020, but it wasn't that bad. It was like random dizzy spells, random here or there. I would feel like I was going to faint, but I never did. I did almost faint once, but that was it. So I just didn't think anything of it. And then in 2021, I started getting really, really sick again. February of 2021, one day I woke up and I was just miserable. I felt like shit. I looked like shit. And most of the time with my illness, I don't look like I feel bad. So if I look like I feel bad, then I really do feel bad. But that's just kind of how it happened. But I finally was able to see a doctor in April of 2021. It took me 3 months to get in with this doctor, and every one of my friends said, if you have something wrong with you, he's going to figure it out, so you need to go see him. So I waited 3 months for the appointment, and I went to see him. And I did vlog a lot of this. It's in my playlist, my chronic illness story. So if you have not heard this whole story, then you need to go watch that. Go watch all those videos I did. But the first appointment, he tested me for anemia and autoimmune hemoleukodemia, and it came back. I wasn't anemic. My ferritin was sky freaking high. My iron was slightly elevated, but not anywhere near what my ferritin was. And I was no longer testing positive for autoimmune hemoleukodemia. So we did that test one more time to make sure it wasn't a fluke. We tested my iron and my ferritin one more time to make sure that wasn't a fluke at a follow-up appointment. And at that point in May, the doctor's like, okay, I don't know how you were ever diagnosed with this, because you were tested 3 times, told you had it, and you were never tested again by any other doctor you saw. And now you come in here and it's completely negative and you don't have it. He said, I'm not saying it's not possible that it just randomly went away, but he said, I don't think you ever had that, and whoever diagnosed you with that was just trying to give you a diagnosis to get you out of their hair. And it was in the ER that I was diagnosed with it. So I'm most likely thinking that's what happened. They saw the note in my purse, wanted to get rid of me because I was in my young 20s, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with her. She's making it up. So yeah. So after figuring out that was a misdiagnosis, I went through more testing, had more specialist appointments, but in the process of all this testing and all these specialist appointments, I kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Until finally, in October of 2021, I went to a cardiologist, and he put me on Florinef, or fludrocortisone. I will put it on the screen because pronouncing these names sometimes is like, ugh. But he didn't tell me what it was he didn't tell me what it was for. He just said, here, I'm putting you on this medication. We're going to try it and follow up with me in 3 months. And if you feel better, then we'll know what's wrong with you. A week later, I went to, or no, like 3 days later, I went to my PCP again for a follow-up. And he said, if this medicine works, then you have POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And he didn't really explain it. He just said if the medicine works, that's what it is. So 3 months later, back to the cardiologist. He went through and said, okay, we're going to continue on this medication because it's helping you, and never said anything. So I looked at him and said, what is it? What do I have? And he said, you have POTS. And so that's when I finally got my correct diagnosis. It took almost 12 and a half years from the time, actually it did take 12 and a half years from the time that I started getting really bad sick with all my issues that I still have. But after my diagnosis, it was pretty much smooth sailing. I had a medication that worked. I had a good set of doctors, finally, after years of searching. Then I started having other random issues. So I kept going to the doctors. I kept asking, something's going on. I kept saying, something's going on. What is it? What can you do? And the cardiologist kept saying, you have POTS. That's all it is. It's just POTS. You've just got to get over it. My neuro sent me for more testing to rule out seizures again, to make sure I wasn't having seizures, and we weren't exactly sure, and all that. And then my regular doctor's like, there's no more testing we can actually pretty much do. Everything we can do you've had done. Then he tested me for anemia again, and my iron was extremely low, like to the point of being anemic, but my ferritin was still elevated. So he's like, okay. And he went through my chart, and he did find where I was anemic when I was in high school. So he said, okay, we'll just count it as you're anemic. And then he found one random blood test that the first doctor I went to in 2016 did, and said, he did test your iron level, but he didn't check your ferritin level. He said you were anemic, but it wasn't that bad. It was like, I was like one number below what I should have been. So the doctor just didn't say anything to me. So he said, okay, now you have POTS. We're going to add anemia to the list, and most likely other stuff will be added too. And then he said, we'll probably diagnose you with chronic fatigue syndrome because of how bad your fatigue is, but some of that can be your medications. So when I finally went off the medication that could cause fatigue, and I was still tired months later, he's like, oh, okay, there's chronic fatigue syndrome. Then in December of 2022, I went in, I was having abdominal pain and it wasn't going away, and I was having all these other issues with indigestion and reflux and all that. And he says, okay, so you have gastritis. He said, take this medication, it should help you. Then after around a month, you'll go off of it. Well, I kept, and then in February, 2 months later, I was back in the office. I'm sorry, my cat just moved my camera. And he said, you still have gastritis. I don't know what's going on. But he said, you also have enteritis this time. So I'm going to put you back on this medication. Do it again for a month. See what happens. In April of that year, I went back for my yearly physical. He said, you still have gastritis. He said, at this point, it is chronic gastritis. Technically, it hasn't been 6 months, so I can't diagnose it as that. But it's been long enough to say you have chronic gastritis for me. So he said, that's what we're going to treat you with. And then the most recent diagnosis I received this April. And some of this is in Day in the Life, if you want to go watch his videos. And he said, of all the issues you've been having with nausea and vomiting, because I've been in that doctor's office 10, 15 times for just nausea and vomiting and not being able to get any relief, no matter what I'm on, no matter what I'm taking. He said, okay, so we're going to diagnose you with cyclic vomiting syndrome. So, as of today, that is my most recent diagnosis. Currently, I live with 5 chronic illnesses: POTS, chronic gastritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, anemia, and cyclic vomiting syndrome. And we're waiting for me to get a spot for a gastric emptying study to test me for gastroparesis and a few other random things that I talked about in a more recent chronic illness video. I did a chronic illness update video and Q&A a few months ago, so yeah, you'll have to go watch those. So, because I don't want to cover it all here because I don't want this video to be too long. So that's going to be it for this video. It was kind of like a chronic illness story, kind of just talking about getting sick when I fell sick at 16, and other than that, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it. I will do more chronic illness content if you want me to. Other than that, I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.